In the previous video, I took my cardstock tracer and I slabbed out a piece of clay, traced this on it, cut it out. I did another one, which that's why this cardstock is curved, because it draws the moisture out of the clay. So I've got two of these made out of clay. So there's one here on this plate, and then I have this one here on my cutting mat. And this one now, you'll notice that when I hold it up like this, the clay is still damp. I can feel that I can move this clay a little bit. It's flexible still, but obviously it's not so droopy. So this is the one that I cut more recently, and you can see that that clay is still very wet, still very, very flexible, and it's not ready to, this one is not ready to sculpt it and to do the subtractive sculpting that I plan to do. So I've got my X-Acto knife, and what I want to do, so here's the 3 stages of clay. So this is still, it's not just the 3 stages, but this is where your clay starts, and this is where it's leathery, it's starting to dry out. I wish it was a little bit softer, but it's not greenware yet, and this is, like, you already know that this is greenware. And when it's greenware, it's incredibly brittle, it's incredibly fragile, and if your clay dries out to this point, you are going to be, if you're trying to sculpt or scratch or do anything like that, clean up the edges, number one, you're going to be making a lot of clay dust, and number 2, you're definitely going to be running the risk of cracking this as you work. So since there is still a little bit of flexibility in this, it's not going to crack. It's going to flex, it's going to give. So there's a little bit of softness to this still. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife, and I'm going to start by cleaning up these spots here. And it's almost like, I don't know, it's weird to describe what this is like. But it's very easy. Like, your X-Acto knife doesn't need to be sharp in order to do this. So I'm going to clean these edges. I'm going to put a little bit of an angle. Just to kind of hide some of those crooked cuts that I made. And you can see, like, if the clay is still wet like this when I cut, let's see if we can get to a spot where you can see this. Like, if I try to clean this edge up, first of all, well, it started to dry a little bit, but the clay is still kind of sticky, and as I cut, it kind of grabs the X-Acto blade, and then it sticks back onto itself. So as you cut these out, you might have noticed that it was not as smooth as it could have been. So, like I said, I'm going to go through and I'm going to put some carve some fingers, and I'm not going to put a ton of detail, but I'm definitely going to go around and I'm going to put this like 45-degree angle. And you can see how that clay is kind of falling off, so it's not sticking to the knife. We'll put that 45-degree angle all the way around, which is going to give it a cleaner finished look. sorry, it's hard to work and talk at the same time, but I'm going to go around, I'm going to clean this one up, and then, oh, the last thing you have to put, so there has to be a hole, since this is a chime, there needs to be a hole in it wherever I'm going to hang. You don't want to drill your hole, you're going to use an X-Acto knife to drill it, you don't want to drill your hole like too close to the edge, because then you run the risk of it cracking. So I'm actually going to put, the reason, actually, when I designed this guy, I actually drew his hair kind of bigger than I normally would have for a normal cartoon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a spot where my X-Acto knife is going to go. I'm going to support it from the back, and I'm not going to press very hard, but I'm just going to twist that X-Acto knife, and that's going to scratch and just kind of dig its way through. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not pressing real hard. I can feel the bump where that X-Acto knife is pressing through. So now I'm going to get my finger out of the way, give it a couple more turns. It's actually kind of feels like a chocolate bar, which is a little bit harder than I'd like it to be, but it's not greenware yet. So I've got that hole drilled through. Now I'm also going to do it from the other side. Knock away any of those extra little pieces, and there I have it. Now you want your hole for your chime, you want it to be big enough. If your hole is too small, when you glaze it, you might accidentally fill that in, and if glaze gets in there in that hole and closes it up, you can't get past that. You can't just re-drill it out. That glaze is rock solid. You're not going to be able to reestablish that hole if it's been plugged up with glaze. So you want to make sure that you've got plenty of room. If you accidentally drop glaze in there, that it's not going to totally close in that opening. So I'm going to go around, like I said, I'm going to put some fingers in here. I'm going to do that 45-degree angle, and I'm going to clean it up and make it look finished. I'm going to get rid of some of this extra like rough texture that's on here. Any of these, like basically this stuff here, I can take some clay tools and clean up. This stuff here, I can clean it up here. So that's what I'm going to do now. And you don't want to do that until your clay is leathery, at least leathery.